Hey everyone, Nathalia here, and welcome to another episode of What is Happening. Today's episode is What was the Cold War? So with China and Russia in the news all the time, it kind of got me thinking, I wonder how many of us born in the 90s or later actually know what the Cold War was. So I wanted to give you a crash course in the Cold War because it fundamentally shaped the world that we were all born into. And without this context, it's impossible to understand so much of what's going on today. So I decided to break this up into a 3-part series, highlighting some of the major concepts and events that you should know about. So without further ado, welcome to part 1, Origins of the Cold War. Firstly, what? What was the Cold War? Well, the Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991, during which the United States and the Soviet Union competed for global influence. Now, why? Why do we call it a Cold War? So it was cold because it was a war over ideas and ideology, as opposed to a hot war, which would mean a battle with actual weapons. And keep in mind, there were plenty of wars, hot wars, in other countries that the two powers provoked, but there was no direct fighting between the two superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union. Side note, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Tsar was overthrown and the new Bolshevik government established a new state, the Soviet Union, which comprised of Russia and other Eastern European territories, all governed by the Communist Party in the capital of Moscow. It fell apart after the Cold War, and today Russia and its former members are all independent countries. So let's take it back to 1945. World War II has just ended. It might be hard to believe today, but the Soviet Union and the United States, they were actually allies in World War II. They fought together to defeat the Nazis. But it was clear pretty quickly that both sides had very different ideas about what the post-World War II world should look like. See, the Soviets, they wanted to expand the Soviet Union into other territories and spread communism. And the Americans wanted to spread their free market capitalist system. So it was decided at the Potsdam Conference that Germany would be divided between the winners, technically into 4 parts, which was the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France. But we're just going to focus on the US and the Soviet Union for this video. So the Soviet Union took East Germany, and they established the German Democratic Republic. And the Western Allies, they took West Germany and created the Federal Republic of Germany. So you now have 2 new countries, each with their own form of government. So keep in mind, even though Germany had been defeated, the war in the Pacific, it was still raging. The US achieved nuclear power and they dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan later that same year, without letting the Soviets in on their top secret plan. So this already strained relationship, it completely fell apart. Joseph Stalin was furious that the Americans went behind his back, but he was also really concerned about the fact that the US now had a monopoly on atomic power. So Stalin began to expand the Soviet bloc into more territories for protection. Now, the most important thing to understand here is how the atomic bomb became the main driver of the Cold War. This horrific weapon had caused more destruction than the world had ever seen. And there was only one country in the world that had it. So that was terrifying to anyone who wasn't buddies with the Americans. And then the Soviets achieved nuclear power in 1949. So the fear of American monopoly turned into a fear of mutually assured destruction. Now, the theory behind MAD is that 2 nuclear powers will not go to war with each other because it would end in the annihilation of both sides, hence mutually assured destruction. So in practice, this led to an arms race where both sides continued to expand their arsenals so that they wouldn't be left behind. And it explains why the Cold War never got hot between the 2 powers, and instead, the hot wars were fought by proxy. So I'm gonna leave you with that while I go to work on the next 2 parts of this series, and we'll dig into some later years in the Cold War. I've included some links for further reading because this is such a big topic and it's so fascinating and it's so important. So I really recommend that you guys dig in a little deeper. So stay tuned. I'll see you guys soon. Leave your comments below. I love reading them and hopefully can answer some of your questions. See ya.